Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Robert Baylor, Director of Communications at NUCA. Welcome to our latest Webinar Wednesday, sponsored by NUCA National Partner Lytx. First, before we begin, some webinar housekeeping. If you haven't done so, go ahead and click on the two blue circles in the webinar personal meeting controls at the bottom of the viewing area. One is the participant list, which allows you to see who else is attending the webinar, and the other is the chat feature. Next slide, please. You can chat amongst each other, or you can send the host messages. Please be respectful. All participants are muted upon entry. Phone participants can use *6 to mute themselves. Questions will be asked at the end of the webinar. To ask a question, you can submit a written question at any time using the chat feature, and I will read those written questions to our presenters at the conclusion of their presentation. Or you can hold your question until the end of the presentation and unmute yourself to ask the question. Please remember to mute yourself again when you are finished asking your question. Now let's get started. Next slide. Today's Webinar Wednesday, generously sponsored and presented by NUCA National Partner Lytx, is on how to detect distracted driving through fleet technology. Our expert presenter today is the longtime Lytx Safety Authority and current head of the Lytx Drive Cam Academy, Mr. Del Blisk. Del is the Vice President of Safety Services at Lytx and has a wealth of industry knowledge, specifically in the area of vehicle and driver safety. Del has supported hundreds of clients to onboard at their company's video-based technology, which you'll get a preview of today. Thanks so much for joining us today, Del. I turn the webinar over to you.
Hey, thanks so much, Bob, and thanks to the NUCA community for giving us some time to share our insights with you. It's certainly my hope that this session will be informative to you and will help you to improve safety and prevent potential injuries to your folks with some of the takeaways that you get from this session here. So just to summarize what Bob just read, bottom line is I've been in fleet safety for a long time, and with myself as well as Lisa Gonzalez, we'll be sharing some of the things we've learned through those experiences. So what we're going to cover, we'll first kind of just outline distracted driving, what it is, what it means to fleets, the kinds of risks that are happening out there, and also share ideas on how to address it within your operations, both from kind of a supervisor or managerial method, as well as also ideas, ways to cope with it using technology. And then once we work our way through that, I'll turn over the reins to my coworker, Lisa Gonzalez. That'll give you more insight about the Lytx technology and how it can help you to address the concern of distracted driving. She'll talk about machine vision and artificial intelligence. There's a lot of players out there beginning to offer that, so she'll also go through kind of tips for evaluating what might be the best solution for you. We'll wrap this all up with audience Q&A, so by all means, as Bob mentioned, feel free to put in questions in the chat area at any point, which we'll respond to at the end of the presentation, or you'll have an opportunity also to ask them verbally at the end there. So I wanted to start off by just sharing a story. And this is one that was actually a report that was put together by NIOSH, the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. And this is an unfortunate incident that happened actually just about a year ago now. And this involved an IT consultant who was visiting a customer. They had finished their customer work actually the night before, staying in a hotel. We've all done that in our travels, I'm sure. And the next morning was just heading to the airport. Unfortunately, driving to the airport, they lost control, veered off into a guardrail, and then from there went directly across the highway into a concrete median. And unfortunately, this resulted ultimately in a fatal collision. And I wanted to give you a little bit more detail about this, what really happened and why. So here's what happened. So this was about 6:30-ish in the morning, so early morning. The IT consultant was driving a Chevy Impala, going down, rental car, no doubt, going down the road, going down the highway, not a lot of traffic on the roadway. So here's the kind of unusual thing that's happening. So this consultant heading back to the airport, driving down the road early morning, coincidentally, a police officer passed him. And the police officer looked over and noticed that this driver was texting on a mobile phone while they're going down the highway. Police officer passed him. looked in the rearview mirror only to see this this driver veer off to the right, hit that guardrail, bounce off the guardrail. Driver, I think, kind of panicked and overcorrected, went directly and hit that concrete median in the center divider between both directions of traffic. Law enforcement obviously turned around, returned back to the scene. When the officer returned to the scene, walked up to the vehicle, he found the person slumped in the car, slumped over the dashboard, but unfortunately, kind of in between the driver's seat and the passenger seat. So, unfortunately, this person was not wearing a seatbelt, and so when they hit the median barrier, they hit the head on the windshield and were, obviously seriously injured. Police officer tried to sustain this person until paramedics showed up. And transported him to the hospital. But unfortunately, about 10 days later, this person died of traumatic brain injury due to the blunt force that they experienced when their head struck the windshield. So in the police report, they would ultimately say that this person died because they hit their head against the windshield. And certainly, if they had been wearing a seatbelt, that probably would not have happened. And this person would be with us today. And certainly that's a lesson learned. But the root cause of all this was this person that was not paying attention to the driving and was busy texting while they were going down the road. That was the root cause that caused this person to lose their life. And unfortunately, stories like this are happening in our communities every week. But they probably don't get enough press. We don't really realize it unless it happens to someone close to us, or heaven forbid, someone that works with us. But this is exactly the kind of thing that's happening out there all too often. In fact, the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration did some testing, some surveys, and they found that it's estimated that about 660,000 people driving vehicles at any given moment are using an electronic device. About 400,000 people are being injured each year because of distracted driving, and this is resulting in almost 3,000 people losing their lives. And from a pure dollars and cents perspective, it's almost $130 billion of cost that we're absorbing each year because of distracted driving. And distracted driving, it's more than just cell phone use. There's other things that can take our attention away from driving. So most experts, when they look at this topic, they kind of considered distracted driving in three different ways. One is a visual distraction. So in the example I described before with the IT consultant, while they were texting and looking at their phone, that was a visual distraction. And I'm sure we've all seen people reading while they're driving, or fumbling with their hair or putting on lipstick. So grooming can take your attention away from driving. And we even see in some businesses, perhaps some that are on the call right now, in some businesses, they even have laptops that are affixed to the center console for work purposes. Obviously, it's very convenient for work, but it is certainly a potential distraction for a driver. There's also the physical distraction. So again, with the example I mentioned with the IT consultant, while they were texting and dialing, they're physically distracted. But we've seen people that are eating while they're driving. That again is a physical distraction. Or reaching to fumble with changing a radio station or inserting a CD. If any of you, if you're like myself, if you have a newer vehicle, the center consoles are so much more complex now. Not only are there a lot more things to kind of push and fiddle with, but it takes more time sometimes to figure out which thing I need to, which button to push or which dial to turn, that sort of thing. So there's, I think, growing distraction there. And of course, if something's not secure in the vehicle, maybe it's a work order that the driver is kind of haphazardly thrown on the dashboard. Well, maybe they make a turn and it slips off the dashboard and starts to fall off. Their instinct is to try and reach and grab for it. That'd be a physical distraction. And then finally, there's also the cognitive distraction. Hopefully, but hopefully not, but perhaps some of you are experiencing it right now. That's where the eyes are open, but the mind's kind of off somewhere else. So that certainly happens to us while we're driving. You often referred to as daydreaming. Well, and certainly while someone's involved in a cell phone call, their mind, while they're listening to the conversation, their mind is flipping away from the driving to thinking about the conversation itself. So all of these are different ways that it can take our attention away from driving, and each has an impact. And if you look at this list, there's only one item that crosses into all three types of distraction, and that is the use of the phone. It's both the visual, physical, and cognitive distraction, which is exactly why it's such a problem, and really why we're having webinars like this today. I did a recent study of looking at our clients, and we have over 3,000 clients, 700,000 vehicles, and I looked at a subset of them, and this primarily consisted of kind of inner city service type vehicles. Looked at about 500 crashes for a lot of different things, but one of the things I was looking for is with higher severity crashes. So these are ones that were likely to have caused a vehicle to be towed away, a physical injury to the person, or an airbag deployed. Taking a look at those particular types of high severity incidences, well, the top three causes of those, the most common was actually someone having trouble staying awake. That was about 40% of those high severity crashes. The next most common was speed management. Not speeding, but simply going too fast for the particular conditions. That was almost 30%. And then in third place, at just under 20%, was distracted driving. So the message here is that distracted driving isn't just increasing the chances of a potential crash, but it's increasing the chances of a very severe potential crash. So that's why it needs really a high focus within organizations. So here we are. What is this, about month 4, month 5 or so of kind of the COVID-19 experience in the U.S. I assume that some of you, like myself, are sitting at home doing a lot of our business. The net result of this is, for one, there's fewer miles being driven overall. Some businesses are driving less, others may be driving quite a bit more because of the nature of what they're doing. So for example, someone that is hauling food goods, we know that more people than ever are staying at home and doing all their eating from home, cooking at home, etc. So those that are transporting food, those drivers are out there longer hours, higher demand. That's also true with a lot of services. Since everyone's at home, all of a sudden people are needing to get their air conditioners fixed and plumbing fixed and all these other sorts of things. So people in these sort of essential services that impact the home, in particular, many of these businesses their drivers are out on the road longer hours because of the greater demand. And what we're seeing from this is that although overall miles driven are down in general, we're seeing that our clients are experiencing more incidents where we're seeing drivers that are fatigued behind the wheel, and it's impacting how they drive. And we're also seeing an increase in instances where drivers are using their cell phone while they're behind the wheel. And in talking to our clients, it seems like there's two primary reasons for this. One is that because of the kind of the high demand for their services, the customer is putting a lot of pressure on them. Where's my delivery? Where's my product? Where's my service call? That sort of thing. So there's a lot more kind of immediate contact between the company, the driver, and the customer, etc. That's really impacting cell phone calls. But the other is, in many cases, this person is out providing the service out on the road, but they may have a spouse at home who may be working from home, may have lost their job. They may also have kids at home that, this is summer right now, but when school starts up again, in many of our communities, school is going to be virtual for a while. So they also have kids at home that they're trying to school and kind of, corral the kids too. So there's a lot of stress at home. The workers that are out on the road doing the jobs are necessarily concerned about the folks back at home, and we're finding that there's more personal calls between the service techs and the people at home. So those are what we're finding are reasons that are driving up the number of calls out there, cell phone instances while people are driving. So that's kind of setting up the concern. So what can you do? Well, I'd like to share some ideas with you. When I talk to our clients that really seem to be handling the issue of distracted driving and specifically cell phone use in driving the most effectively, I find that they tend to have a three-pronged approach. So on one end, they're constantly providing education to their driving population about the dangers of distracted driving and how to minimize it and why they shouldn't be doing it. But they don't just leave it at that. They also know that ultimately it is up to the individual to decide to adopt that or change that behavior. And the best way to do that is to appeal to their emotions, get a connection to them that makes them think that it's important for them to do it. So they have kind of an emotional appeal as another strategy. And then the third one, that's just simply necessary for multiple reasons. There also needs to be some sort of enforcement. If people are not complying with the guidelines, there needs to be some actions, processes in place to address that. So I call this the 3 E's: education, emotional appeal, and enforcement. So I would encourage you to, in your strategies of reducing distracted driving within your business, look to see if you're also doing the 3 E's. If any of those areas are light, you might want to bulk them up a little bit. So here's, again, some ideas as it relates to that. When we talk about education, there have been numerous studies done over the years about the dangers of distracted driving. And because of that, there's just a wealth of information out there that can be so useful in helping you to provide meaningful education to your folks and helping them to understand why it's so dangerous. Here's just a handful of things that I grabbed, but there's so much more out there. So the Virginia Tech did a study that found that using cell phones, that results 4 times more likely to get in a crash that results in a serious injury. So again, really kind of confirms what I found in my individual study. Cell phone crashes tend to be more severe. The Department of Transportation, if any of you have some of your folks driving commercial motor vehicles, 10,000 GVW and up, they are probably required to comply with DOT rules. And the DOT bans the use of handheld cell phones while driving a commercial motor vehicle. And Virginia Tech, again, within their study found that texting increases crash risk by 23 times. There's 1.6 million traffic accidents and, again, almost 400,000 injuries occurring each year due to distracted driving. Now, this next bullet point I think is important because I don't think everyone understands this. And that is simply that the brain cannot multitask. There are some people out there that truly believe that they have the ability to be engaged in a cell phone call and driving down the road and be able to do both things properly at the same time. The brain doesn't have the ability to do that. And what the brain does is simply shifting from one task to another. So if you're on a cell phone call and you're driving down the road, your brain is shifting to the thinking about the roadway, shifting to the conversation, and going back and forth. And the net result of this is it simply ultimately slows down your decision making and therefore kind of your reaction time to things changing on the roadway. There was a study done by the National Safety Council that found that people talking on the phone can miss up to 50% of their driving environments while they're engaged in that call. So they found that people during their tests were missing things like pedestrians and red lights, for example. And when it does come to information, there are great resources out there. 2 of them I think are probably the best resources, and they have a lot of free educational material for you to access. One is the National Safety Council's website, that's nsc.org, and another, which is actually managed by the Department of Transportation, but the website is enddd.org, so enddistracteddriving.org. Both of those have lots of videos, lots of handouts, lots of information that you can use to provide in various formats to your folks on the topic of distracted driving. Here's an exercise that I often do when I'm working directly with folks that are driving. And this is something that you can do in a live, in-person meeting. But I know for many of us, we're kind of minimizing those in-person meetings and maybe having Zoom meetings or Webex meetings and things like that. So here's how this works. What you do is you simply ask everyone to get out their cell phone, And then you just share with them your cell phone number, and ask them to go ahead and dial it. And you just look and just count how many seconds does it take till the first person connects with you. Typically takes about 5 seconds. So people are dialing, it takes about 5 seconds to complete that task, and the phone rings. So let's put that in the real world. And so let's say we have someone going down the road at 30 miles an hour, and they decide to make a call. So they're going to grab the phone and dial that number. That's going to take about 5 seconds. They have about 5 seconds where their eyes were off the road. Well, at 30 miles an hour, they're traveling at about 45 feet per second. If you multiply miles per hour times 1.5, that gets you very close to the feet per second. So 30 miles times 1.5, that's 45 feet per second. We know that they had their eyes off the road for 5 seconds while they were dialing. So we multiply the 5 times the 45 feet per second, and what we end up with is 225 feet. In other words, this person, while they were simply dialing the phone, they had their eyes off the road for more than 2/3 of a football field. So for more than 2/3 of a football field, they were relying on nothing more than blind luck to keep them out of trouble. And that the more you do that, the less likely that's going to work out for you. So this is just a little exercise you can do to help people understand that even with the most innocent act of a quick dialing of the phone, it still has a significant impact on their awareness to the roadway. So the second E that I mentioned after education was to have an emotional appeal, connect with a person on a personal level. I had one of our clients was having a real problem with folks that were just too many people were using the cell phone while driving, and they were really getting frustrated with this. And so what they ended up doing is a survey, it was an anonymous survey, and one of the questions they asked each person was, who is it that you're contacting or is contacting you on the cell phone while you're driving? And it turned out and this is probably no surprise, that more than 50% of those calls and texts that these drivers were getting were coming from their family members. So in other words, the people that had the biggest stake in the safety of the person behind the wheel were exactly the ones that were putting them at the most risk. And so what the company then did is they put together a letter that kind of talked about the dangers of distracted driving, explained that explained to the family members that when they're calling or texting, their dad and mom while they're driving, or husband or wife, it's exposing them to risk. And so they encouraged them to, if it wasn't critical, not to do it. And they also suggested that if you do feel compelled to call that person who's at work, the first question should simply be, is it safe to talk? In other words, are they behind the wheel or not? If the answer is yes, that means they're not behind the wheel or they're off the road stopped and they can field the call. If the answer is no, it's simply going to be a callback by the driver, once they are at a point where they're stopped and can safely make a call. And they've had a lot of success with that. And again, this is something where they're really getting the family involved in helping to make the change. I mentioned before how valuable it is to make it personal. So we have several of our clients that really kind of bring it home from a family perspective. So they'll include letters home to the families about dangers of distracted driving. We had one client that did a poster campaign for the children of their employees. So they invited employees to have their children create posters on why it's important to avoid distracted driving. And so these kids made these posters and they put them up around the workplace. And you can imagine, and it's really interesting, a supervisor, a supervisor maybe trying to drum this message home to the people they manage and kind of falls on deaf ears. But you put up a few posters that are from your child or from a coworker's child, it has a far bigger impact than that supervisor ever can. One other idea I'll share with you I thought was pretty clever. We had another organization that what they did is they had a safety meeting on distracted driving and the dangers and kind of covered all the bases there. And then they also made available what they referred to as cell phone bags. And you can see it depicted here, that little orange bag. So the idea is that if the employee wants this bag, they would keep it in their car or truck. And what they would do is when they got into their vehicle, their work vehicle, they'd simply put the phone in that bag, zip it up. In other words, it's kind of out of the way, not easy to access, to help them avoid the temptation of grabbing that phone. So at the end of their safety meeting on the topic, they then asked if whoever would like this bag just coming up, well, we'll give you one. And several people did. And each person that came up to get the bag, before they gave them the bag, they handed them a Sharpie marker pen and asked them to write the name of a loved one on that bag. Again, making it personal. Let me set this up first. I'd like to share a video here that, and I'll play it through my phone so hopefully you can hear it okay, but this is from the National Safety Council, but it's one person explaining how a distracted driving incident impacted their life.
I wish there were enough words to describe my parents. They were both just the most wonderful people. You know, every week they were at the soup kitchen helping to feed the underprivileged and always helping other people. So, you know, my mom was the cool 8th grade English teacher. Anytime I'm home, my neighbors always say they just don't know what to do. That anytime they needed a lawnmower fixed or a new well dug or their shutters painted, just absolutely everything. My dad was always just could not say no and help everyone he could help. The date was May 18th of 2008. It was my college graduation day. You know, my parents and I were just driving this really easy drive that we'd done so many times, but because of a young driver talking on his cell phone while he was driving, because a 3-vehicle collision that ended the lives of both my parents and ended all hopes of the life I had been planning. And there happened to be a paramedic who lives right on the scene. He heard the crash and came to see if everyone was okay. When he got there, my mom didn't even have a heartbeat. My dad had a really faint heartbeat, but it faded almost right away. And when he came to me, I had a really strong pulse, but I wasn't breathing. So I moved my head and I took a gasp for air. We were literally around the corner from the ambulance station and less than 10 minutes from a trauma hospital. My life has changed in every way imaginable. Not only with my parents being gone, but, you know, just being in this entirely new body. Broken bones heal, but, you know, a brain injury is forever. And that amazingly, I lost not too much cognitive ability. My body doesn't really is what my arm can do. I can't move my wrist. I can't move my fingers. I can't move my ankle. I can't move my toes. It's just so difficult that I can't really function as a normal human being. That's things I used to love to do. I can't do anymore. You know, I was an outdoors girl. There's no more hiking. There's no more biking. There's no more throwing a baseball around. There's no more canoeing. There's no more camping. Those are my absolute favorite things to do.
So sharing stories like this have a lot more impact on most people than you or I, you know, standing up in a meeting room or on a Zoom call, sharing company policy and talking to people about what they shouldn't do. So I would encourage you to periodically reach out for resources like this and share these with folks. Again, it reaches them on an emotional level that we never can by ourselves otherwise. But unfortunately, policies are required, and enforcement of those policies are necessary too. So I did want to go over a little bit of that. The first statement, and I'm trusting the answer is yes, but all of you should have very clearly defined, written down, communicated policies on what is permitted or not permitted as far as use of cell phones while driving. Here's some basic components. It should express the purpose, background, and applicability of the policy. You know, why is there a policy? Who does it apply to? You also need to define the policy. You know, what is the policy trying to do? In this case, you know, it's intended to define certain prohibited activities that could cause drivers to have their attention off of driving, and to prescribe practices that help employees safely operate company equipment. need to be specific prohibitions. What can they or can't they do as it relates to the use of the cell phone while driving? Is there some flexibility there? Are they permitted to use hands-free but not handheld, et cetera? Those things should be clearly expressed. Also should be suggested practices, such as a recommendation that if they must make a call to pull off the road before using the cell phone, for example. And then finally, there also needs to be consequences for violating policy. If someone does violate the policy, what actions are in place? So this policy really is important for multiple reasons. One is the obvious. In every organization, there's a handful of people that just don't seem to come around with compliance with policy, so you need to have some teeth in it. But hopefully this never occurs to you, but if in your organization there's a serious vehicle crash and cell phone use is suspected, and if it goes to litigation, you better believe that plaintiff attorney is going to be asking your organization to produce your policy. And if it's a policy that doesn't exist, or it's got holes in it, or if it's vague, or if it's not enforced, those are big openings to expand the judgment, the ultimate settlement on the other end. Wanted to share one example. So we didn't talk about it before, but in our technology, we capture video of potentially unsafe driving actions so that our clients can be aware of it and then work with the drivers to find ways to improve and reduce the risk. So this is a video clip from one of our clients. And the interesting thing here is this is a client, they had a cell phone policy, and yet this person is going to be using the cell phone anyway. So it's not just a matter of having a policy. You need to have a means to monitor for compliance. And also in this video, which I'll play in just a moment here, what you're going to see is the driver has the cell phone in his right hand. He is a utility worker, obviously heading to the job. And the ironic thing is, even though he's using a cell phone, he clearly is aware of the need for safety because he's already wearing his high visibility vest. So he's thinking about and also gloves. So he's thinking about safety at the work site, but forgetting about the need for safety getting to the work site. And then one final comment here, you're going to see at the very end a school crossing. So this is all kind of happening in and around a school zone. So as you saw, the driver was putting a lot of attention to the cell phone and dialing or texting, and during that time, failed to recognize that traffic had come to a complete stop. Fortunately, in this case, he got lucky. He looked up just in time and swerved to the right and avoided running into anything. But when he made that swerve to the right, did he know if there was a bike rider or someone riding a scooter and along the curbside there? Absolutely not. So it was just simply blind luck. So these are exactly the sort of instances when you identify these, the goal here obviously is to correct this behavior before it becomes something a lot more critical. So technology is definitely another aspect, I think another important tool to help you combat the dangers of distracted driving. All of your folks have cell phones, and probably all of them are smartphones. So if they have an iPhone or an Android phone, which is just about everything out there these days, there is the ability for them, if you go to settings, they can then go to do not disturb, and there's the option to set their phone to do not disturb while driving. And so it'll detect when the vehicle is going over a certain speed, and call-ins will go straight to voicemail, that sort of thing. So I find that surprisingly, there's quite a few people that are not aware of this. So I would certainly share this capability with your folks in a safety meeting if you're talking about distracted driving. Admittedly, not all of them will do it, but if you get 5, 10, 15, 20% of them to do this, that's a significant percentage that we're ahead of the game on the risk. There's also technologies out there that are designed to help block cell phone calls. There's actually lots of them on the market, and they typically are either an application that you install on the phone itself, or it's a hardware device that you put in the vehicle. in all cases, essentially what they do is they're blocking inbound calls and also the outbound ability to call or text while the vehicle is in motion. Some of them can be configured so that if someone does send a text, or it'll notify immediate supervisor, that occurred. And you can set up geofences on some of them also. All of them do permit you to still make a 911 call, and all of them that I looked into, none of them block the passenger calls. So this technology is out there. It's not perfect. So for example, with the apps, well, if you install this cell blocking app on your company phones that you provide your folks, now they may still have a personal phone that doesn't have it, so they can pretty easily dodge that. With the hardware devices, I've heard kind of mixed results. There's obviously a little more cost to it. And I've heard some instances where if you have vehicles that are communicating back to the workplace in other ways, that it may create some interference for that. So you want to do your homework on that one. So these are just a couple of ideas on how to leverage technology. What I'd like to do next is introduce my coworker, Lisa Gonzalez. Lisa is our senior marketing manager. So anyway, Lisa's been with our company over 5 years. She's been involved with high technology for 15 years. And one of the things that she recently did a motorcycle ride from San Diego to Seattle. And so what she found kind of interesting, if any of you ride motorcycles, you know how aware you are of the folks around you, and a mistake by a driver when you're riding a motorcycle has a lot more serious consequence than when you're in a car. So it really made her kind of hyper aware of the issues of distracted driving because she just saw what she saw during that ride. So this is Lisa and a friend that on their ride. And what she wanted to talk about was really our use of machine vision and artificial intelligence. And with that machine vision, it works really just like your cameras. And for all of us these days, I think we're using our camera phones to do things. So the machine vision basically hones in on when you point it at something, it is identifying that particular object. And then it's going to be the artificial intelligence that's going to be making decisions about what it sees and what it means. So think of machine vision as your eyes, and think of artificial intelligence as kind of your brain. So the machine vision sees and recognizes, and artificial intelligence interprets and decides. So this is an example of how this works. So with our machine vision, what it's doing is it's continually analyzing movements both in front of the vehicle as well as in the cab of the vehicle. And the artificial intelligence, because we're receiving about 5 million video clips a month that are actually being reviewed by humans for all sorts of behaviors. That learning is being fed back into the artificial intelligence to make it smarter and smarter, so that it's getting more accurate in making its decisions. So before we identify something as, for example, a driver falling too close or a driver that's using a handheld cell phone, we want to have a 95% confidence that it's accurate, because the last thing that we want to be doing is inaccurately identifying potentially risky activities that are being directed to our clients and just overwhelming them with things that are not really actionable. Here's an example of the machine vision and artificial intelligence. So this is one where it's triggered because of the driver was holding the cell phone. It created this short video clip. So it has the ability to send an alert to the driver, kind of giving them a heads up, hey, you're on a cell phone, so they get a chance to self-correct, which is really what we'd prefer anyway. But then it also will, once it's confirmed, it will capture a short video clip that is flagged and in essence made available typically to a supervisor so that they can connect with this person and talk to them about this issue or coach them on the issue. So in 2015 is really when we first started introducing our machine vision and artificial intelligence technology. And it first started with things in front of the vehicle. So the ability to identify rolling stops. And by that I mean a vehicle approaches a stop sign and doesn't come to a complete stop. In California, we refer to it as a California stop. Seems like they refer to it that way everywhere else too. Also, following distance. Another trigger that can be enabled to alert drivers as well as capture video is on following distance. So if a driver is following closer than your recommendation for a continuous period of seconds, it will start sending an alert to the driver so they can self-correct. And if they don't self-correct, it will create a short video and again flag it so that a supervisor can identify it and coach the driver on that if necessary.
So that video that Del just showed you was an actual video event that was triggered by artificial intelligence of handheld device use. So, you know, you wouldn't want to watch 20 minutes of that, of your driver texting or making you phone calls, but, you know, what we want you to see is a video highlight of the driver using their phone. And seconds of video is really, you know, all you need to see to get an idea of what the driver's doing. So in this, you know, back in 2015, we released our first machine vision and artificial intelligence technology. And that just looked at the road and the lines on the road. And, you know, the technology could kind of hypothesize that there was something going on in the cab. So when the technology, you know, saw an interruption in, you know, late departure following distance, it would capture a video, and you know, most of the time we could find the driver. You would see what the driver was doing at the same time. But since then, you know, our technology has really advanced, and it has made it possible to find even more risk with drivers behind the wheel. And so, you know, as you heard Del say, a lot of drivers are on the road more, and they're trying to keep in touch with friends and family, and there's more pressure to do jobs more quickly or deliver goods and services. And we're hearing from a lot of our clients that with the lockdown that deliveries are up or services are up because people are home, or there's just more desire to do more while people are, you know, staying at home. But a lot of times, you know, we are hearing that people are working more than 60 hours a week. So you can imagine, you know, as Del said, that people are just trying to stay in touch with home and let people know what's going on. But if we go to the next slide, I want to show you something really interesting. And that is in February of this year, we introduced the evolution of our technology that monitors the driver. And it looks for patterns of behaviors that relate to things like texting, seatbelt use, driver smoking, or food and drink. And the most pervasive habits, these are the most pervasive habits that we found our clients really want to monitor. Now, smoking and food and drink aren't necessarily risky. Smoking could be, you know, determined as risky if you're carrying a hazardous load. But some companies, you know, don't really need to coach it because their drivers are on the road for a long time. They don't necessarily want them taking smoke breaks every hour. So the idea here is to verify what's happening so you can coach if you need to. So sometimes drivers, you know, have a habit, they don't even realize they're doing it. So looking at that handheld device or cell phone, you know, they can look at it for 30 seconds. And when they review a video, they say, wow, we really didn't realize that we were looking at our phones for that long. But the fact remains that these behaviors can be really risky, and if they continue, they lead to serious consequences. So if we advance to the next slide, you know, a lot of this sounds easy to do, but the fact is a really complex technology, and it takes a lot of data to feed the accuracy of these kinds of technologies. And there's a lot of companies out there who are in their first or second years and that are claiming to capture risk, but when it comes down to it, they have failed to meet expectations. So what that means is they're capturing a driver who's just simply driving, and it generates what we call noise. So the customer ends up looking at a lot of behaviors that aren't necessarily dangerous. But at Lytx, we know it's really important to deliver the most accurate information possible. So I want to give you a quick peek behind the curtain as to how we validate our technology, so you can kind of get an idea of what happens here. So if we go to the next slide, what I'm going to show you is a video of a driver using a cell phone. They're smoking and they're not wearing a seatbelt all at the same time. And if you see those red boxes at the front, those are when the driver is performing that behavior. The colorful line at the bottom is telling you that, there's cell phone. In the red, there's food and drink, where there's not a lot going on there, but you can see the driver is smoking, and you can see where the lines are correlating to that driver's actions. So, texting alone, but all three at the same time, we'll just let you decide how dangerous that is for yourself. So, there's a lot to think about when you're looking at technology. So what I want to do is go to the next slide, is in the spirit, we're all really busy. And in the spirit of making our lives easier, I want to give you a few tips to consider should you find yourself evaluating a high-tech solution. So it's really going to arm you with some informed questions or things to look for, so that you can make sure that you're getting the right technology for your fleet. So next slide is, there's three things. You want to make sure that it's manageable. So when you're looking for a technology, you want to make sure that it empowers the drivers. We know some of our customers really want to talk to their customers, but first and foremost, we want to see if the driver can correct their own behavior without manager intervention. And the real change happens when real behavior change happens when people are actively participating in their own transformation. So when you're looking at solutions, look for one that gives drivers the tools to do just that, to correct their own behavior on their own, right from the get-go. So things like alerts, in-cab alerts that, beep at the driver and, say, hey, distracted, or, check your seatbelt, are great for prompting drivers in the moment. But one of the things that's really important for engagement improvement is when they're not driving. So, once you get out of the car, that drive is over. But our research shows, and if you think about the way sports coaches work with their athletes, it's that people and athletes can learn a great deal from watching their own video, because it allows them to observe themselves from a different perspective, from an outsider's perspective, like they're watching a movie. And just the simple act of taking a few seconds to watch what happened and review it helps the driver see and basically helps them more clearly understand what they need to work on or what happened in that moment. So, and not only that, but it helps them better retain the information that they watched when they're not driving, and they're able to focus on it for a few minutes. Driving takes up a lot of mental time, and think about when you drive, sometimes you don't even remember how you got to work that day. So the best solutions, keep your workload manageable. So look for a solution that puts tools in the driver's hand so that they can try and improve their driving safety without your manager intervention before you consider something like coaching. The second thing is the technology should help you know where to focus. So there's a lot of technologies out there that are a one-size-fits-all. It's almost a cookie-cutter solution. And the solution that's probably right for you is going to be the one that's right, that conforms to your unique business situations. So you want to make sure that you can configure the services and features that are right for you and sort of right-size your solution, so that you can make sure that you're getting everything that you need, but nothing that you don't. So a lot of drivers claim to detect distracted driving, but the best in class ones not only detect distraction, but they can actually distinguish between different behaviors. So think about cell phone use, smoking, or eating. You might not care if your driver is eating on the road. And if you have the technology that has just general distractions, it doesn't really allow you to focus and be really surgical about what your drivers are doing. So let's say that you want to really make sure that your drivers aren't smoking, because it could put your driver or your cargo in danger. But eating lunch on the go is okay. The technology really should be able to filter between the things, and we have found that the best technologies that are out there are giving you just what you want to look at, so that you're not looking at your driver eating and it's something that you really don't care about addressing in your fleet. So make sure that whatever it is that you choose, that it helps you focus and gives you the things that you really care about and leaves out all the other stuff. And then rapid. So, of course, everybody wants to get the best results as quickly as possible. I mean, nobody has time to waste, especially when it comes to safety. And techs and drivers are usually challenged to be more productive the more, mile after mile. So the technology that you are considering investing in should help you reach the best levels of productivity as quickly as possible with minimal effort. So when you're looking for a solution, make sure that it helps your drivers immediately become aware of their behavior so they can self-correct as it happens. And then you shouldn't also, have to wait to get the video that you need. You should be able, the best-in-class solutions allow you to get the video anytime you want. I mean, the last thing you want to happen is that you get a call at, outside of business hours that your driver has been involved in some kind of incident. And, if you call a company after hours to request the video that you need, it could be the next day or the next afternoon. And you want to make sure that your driver's okay as soon as possible. So when you're looking for a system, make sure that it helps you get the video as quickly as you can. Like, think about as fast as you can find a YouTube video, that's as fast as you should be able to find your video. And finally, it should give you some reports that you could simply skim and just see how your drivers are doing. So, like a quick snapshot of your driver's ranking just to see who's trending the worst, or, what are the most prevalent behaviors in your fleet that you might want to address. So make sure that you can, get immediate results with as minimal effort as possible. And so make sure that your provider has the tools that'll help you do your job faster and makes it really easy to do your job. So next. So in summary, go to the next slide, Del. The technology, like I said, you want to make sure that the technology does the heavy lifting for you. We know that fleet owners like you have a lot on your plate, and you can't monitor every driver at every minute of the day. So the technology that delivers the real-time alerts and helps your drivers correct in the moment, combined with video review, can help your drivers really understand and retain what they need to work on. Especially outside of those driving times when they're not able to think or focus on it. So with that, I hope you learned something a little bit about our time together, during our time together, and I'll turn it over for questions.
Lisa, thank you. If our members have any questions, go ahead and you can either submit them via chat, or you can raise your hand, which is a little feature, and interrupt. Thankfully, I've got 3 questions right now that our members end up submitting via chat. The first one is to you, Lisa. Some of our fleet vehicles already have dash cams installed that we use mostly for crash cams. What's the advantage of installing new cameras with your NVAI technology?
Yeah, that's a great question. We get that question a lot, actually. And typical dash cams are great for recording and, looking at video after the fact. So if you've had a collision, you can go back and see what happened. But a lot of times, the dangerous behaviors that lead to collisions are happening way before the collision. So they're happening all the time. And it becomes a matter of not if, but when. So where the artificial intelligence technology comes in is that it can actually proactively detect behaviors as they're going on. So, and it can also issue an alert so the driver can just become aware very quickly and correct them before they lead to a catastrophic incident. So the key is really putting the onus on the driver and helping them to, prevent their own, prevent their own collision and just be a safer driver as they're driving throughout the day. And the great thing is we just released a feature called Driver Check-in that makes it easy for drivers to correct their behaviors without manager intervention. So they can get the alert and then they can log on into a web-based app where they can watch video or see how they're ranking against fellow drivers. And we're looking forward to see how that that works for customers, because we've heard a lot of our customers are really interested and very proactive in helping their drivers self-correct. So MBAI really helps proactively detect the behaviors that a lot of people are concerned with.
And that sort of dovetails into the next question, which is, how do you effectively change driver behavior to get your drivers to operate the vehicles more safely?
Repeat that one more time.
Sure, no, you bet. From Mark, how do you effectively change driver behavior to get your drivers to operate the vehicles more safely?
So they can, sometimes simply by just looking at the video will give them some awareness of what they're doing. But a lot of times we have, driver coaching has been really our premier way of getting kind of engaging drivers on a regular basis. So just the simple act of talking to the driver, and, it's not in a punitive way. It's just like, hey, we saw a couple things, and asking the driver what they think they could have done better lets them kind of, figure out for themselves. So it's not you telling them what to do. Ask them the questions and just say, hey, what do you think you could have done better? And we found that has been really effective.
All right. Oh, thank you. And the last one I've got here, if there's any other questions people want to submit, please do so by chat. The last one is, what are you seeing other companies do? What are some of the considerations that they have in order to change driver behavior?
Well, they're looking at a lot of things like alerts. So we have found, our sales team for sure has been like, alerts have become really an important way for customers to help make their drivers aware in the moment. But the thing, that we know for sure is that once they're out of that vehicle, they forget about it. And so that's why, looking at their own video is a really important kind of 1-2 punch for them to just see what they did. And if necessary, if the, behavior is persistent, then you can coach that driver in a positive way.
And the last one we have is what are some ways to have the employees be involved in their own change or improving their behaviors?
Well, we have found gamification and competition makes it kind of fun. Fairfax County actually does this. They have a safety Super Bowl every year, and it just becomes this hilarious competition between drivers where there's a lot of trash talking, and it makes it fun. So it's not like, if you're a bad driver, you're going to get in trouble. Look for ways to make it fun for the drivers. We have something going on at work right now. We're having a fitness challenge, and every day I'm looking at my score, and I'm on my team. I'm like, make sure you get your points in. So things like that to get the drivers involved in their own safety and making it fun, we have found really effective and creative.
I'm glad to hear that's happening in my county here in Fairfax. Great.
Yeah, nice.
All right, then we're up at the limit. Del and Lisa, thank you very much for your time today to present this information to our guests. We'd also like to thank Lytx for their kind support of NUCA and our educational webinars. Today's webinar will be recorded, and a copy of the recording will be provided to all registrants and attendees. And it will also be available on the NUCA.com website. And thank you for your time today to join us for Webinar Wednesday and supporting NUCA. Our next webinar will be held Wednesday, September 9th at 2 p.m. Eastern, titled, What Small Changes Can You Make at Your Job Site That Reap Big Rewards, presented by NUCA National Partner Komatsu. Thank you for your time this afternoon, and please enjoy the rest of the week.